Hello and welcome to the first episode of Around West Warwick High. My name is Brian Lynch and I am currently a junior attending West Warwick High School. During this podcast, I will interview most of the staff members of West Warwick High School and learn about their jobs and a little about their life outside of school. Today, my first guest is Mrs. Lisa Narcisi-Stewart, and she is an English teacher who mostly teaches sophomore classes and a few junior. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm good. So, what led you to your profession as a teacher?
Well, it wasn't really a straightforward path because when I was in high school, I always thought that teachers were really boring and I wanted to do something important. And so I went to Mount Holyoke College and I decided when I was there that I wanted to change the world. And so I moved to San Francisco after painting houses for summer. Saved up enough money to move to San Francisco, and there I worked for so many organizations, and it was actually amazing how many different things I did as a job. It just sort of exploring, kind of learning all of the different skills that I had, which I figured out once I started working. I had a lot of different skills I didn't even know existed, really. And then at a certain point I realized that teaching is a really great way to make the world a better place. It sounds a little
Cliche,
yeah, but also, why not want to make the world a better place? Like, what is there really something better to do with your life? I mean, why not do that? So, but then I had to make it back to Rhode Island from San Francisco because it's a very expensive thing to do, to go back to college and to work full-time. So I took a roundabout path and lived in New Orleans for a little bit, and then realized the cockroaches were too big and I don't like really hot, humid temperatures. So, and I also sprained my ankle. I was a waitress on Bourbon Street and I sprained my ankle on my birthday.
Sounds like fun.
I dropped a drink on someone, and I thought, I just need to get out of this place. This is a nightmare. So luckily, I have parents who fortunately like me, or at least they used to. Hopefully they still do. I don't know. But they took me in again, and I went to Rhode Island College. I actually got a job at the Rhode Island Writing Project, which is a network of teachers that teach teachers how to teach writing. And so they paid for my master's degree. And I got to work at Rhode Island College, which was just an awesome experience. It was one of the best things I've ever done. And so I got to learn how to be a teacher while I was working and surrounded by the most passionate teachers in the state. And so I realized that what I just had this kind of general thought as a cliche became this like really kind of an intense calling. And so that, what was the original question?
What led you to your profession as a teacher?
Yeah. Well, what led me to West Warwick High School specifically, actually. So I was like really a passionate, very new teacher, which is meant I was obnoxious because when you're like super passionate about something and it's new to you, you can be ridiculously obnoxious about it. Like whatever it is, vegetarianism, religion, like when you're new to something, you can be very hard to be around. So that was me because I was over the top. And I got a job at North Smithfield as a 7th grade English teacher. And I loved it. But my department chair didn't like me because she just looked at the world in a very different way. And every time she saw me, her face would get red and she would shake. She was just like really angry at me all the time. So one day, I took my 7th graders outside to read. Because it was a block schedule. I had an hour and a half with 7th graders, and it was like 95 degrees in the classroom. You know how it gets here.
Yes.
And so I took them outside, and they have this beautiful green space with these trees, and they were so happy. They're all reading books. I mean, these kids couldn't have been any happier. And the principal, that's another long story, had he sent a teenager, like a high school student, out to tell me that I couldn't have my kids reading outside. They had to go back into the building. The history teacher next to me had an illegal air conditioner, and he was playing Three Stooges movies. Nothing to do with this curriculum, but I was in trouble for going outside. that same day, I got a call from West Warwick High School saying that if I wanted the job here, I could have it, because I had just had an interview. And I was like out of there so fast. I'm like, yes, please. And so now any student who's ever had me knows that they end up going outside with me, because that's just, it's always been something that was important to me, and I wasn't allowed to do it there. It was crazy. So that's what led me to West Warwick High School, which I've been here now since 2005. And I keep coming back, actually. Like, I've been offered other jobs, and I've moved across the country, and I've come back here consistently. So, because I feel like I've got more academic freedom here than I did in other places.
So you sound like you like to travel the world. So what's the most interesting place you've ever been to?
Okay, so my first thoughts, the first thing I thought of was Japan, because, excuse me, Japan is, well, it's so completely different. It's like, it feels like another world. But then, if I'm being really honest, my grandfather's, the village that he grew up in Italy, was a pretty amazing place to visit. And just getting there felt like this epic adventure, because it's not, you can't even really find it on a map. And so it was hard to even locate. And then when I got there, the train doors didn't open, so I had to like go past the village and then kind of hitchhike back. And it was a lot of drama to actually get to this village. It's Itri, Italy, which is a place in Cranston that's kind of there's a restaurant called Cafe Itri, and they kind of call that section in Cranston, which is Knightsville, they call it Little Itri. And so anyway, going there was a very big deal.
Are you married?
Yes, I'm married. I've been married since 2006 to Robert Stewart. He's a major in the Army, or he's now retired, but he was in the Army for 30 years. And he's a history teacher in Woonsocket, and has like coached all kinds of different sports. He's a lawyer. He was a JAG in the military. So he's very interesting, I think. Very, very smart.
Yeah.
He's very smart, which is one of the things I love about him.
So do you guys have any kids together?
2. Yep, I've got 2 little boys. David, who is going to be 10 on January 18th, and Oliver, who's 5, and he'll be 6 in March.
Sounds like fun. Yeah.
It is. I'm surrounded by boys, which is funny because I went to a women's college. So if you had asked me in college if I could picture myself just absolutely surrounded by boys, I would have said no. And now they're just really fun and sweet.
So I personally haven't had you, but I know my friends say you like to meditate in class. So when all these boys you're surrounded by get too stressful, do you just go and meditate?
I have at certain times, but what I find works a little better is I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but my 5-year-old Oliver, when he gets really stressed out, he'll say, "Mama, om with me." And he'll just, the next thing I know, he's sitting there oming, like at night before bed if he can't sleep. "Mama, om with me." I don't do that with my classes because I don't know, I think it would just freak people out. I don't even really use the term meditate. I used to, but then I had a couple of students on reflection say they felt uncomfortable because they felt like that was religious. And it's not. It never has been for me. Like, that's not for some people it can be, but I was never incorporating religion into the classroom, not as I saw it. That was certainly never my intent. So I call it mindfulness because that actually is, I think, a more accurate way of describing it, is just kind of bringing students into the moment, because it's hard enough to focus. We're all running all over the building from place to place and expectation to expectation, and so just sort of coming into the moment is a very important thing. I would feel too guilty just separating myself from my family and going and meditating. I have done that, though. 10 minutes a day of actual meditation, it's amazing how it changes everything in your life. It's actually astonishing. Try it as an experiment sometime. You'll be astonished by it.
All right, I will.
Have you ever?
No, I haven't.
10 minutes a day. Set it. I mean, you can find apps and stuff online, but like if you set a timer for 10 minutes and you just sort of sit and breathe, and when you get distracted, bring your mind back to the fact that you're breathing. You can even count your breath. Just count one in, one out, and just count your breath as it goes in and out. And when you get distracted, go back to one. That's what I did with my period 1 class today. If you're tired, it'll wake you up. If you're grumpy, you'll feel better. So yes, I do that. I love that. And one of the reasons I do it is because on the other end of it, I'm in a much better mood. So I'm a better teacher because I'm incorporating mindfulness into my classes. So it's selfish. And I know from experience that it impacts the classes positively. Even the mostly it's boys who are giggling in the back or sarcastic or whatever. It doesn't even matter. They may not be ready for it, but it still is an excellent use of time in a classroom. It's amazing how much more you get done when you start off coming into the moment and being mindful. It's pretty astonishing.
You know, Mr. Livesey, the band teacher, he sometimes before we warm up, he'll just have us sit and breathe. Because he said over the summer he read some mindful books and he's trying to calm down. And he said he had like a whole anger management issues, so he's working on the mindfulness too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like anxiety is a really big problem for our society just in general, but certainly for high school students. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And so I think it's just for our mental health, I think we need to incorporate practices like this, almost to like balance out how much time we're spending on our phone, because mostly that's not mindful. It's almost like the antithesis of mindfulness. And so I think it's like, I feel like life is all about balance on every level. It's like family and school and exercise and mind stuff and sleeping and awake and like healthy food and junk food, it's all about balance. And I think that our use of technology is out of balance because it doesn't feel mindful. Like, think about it. You have a phone, right? Okay. Have you ever been doing something on your phone, like probably social media related? I mean, there's so many different forms of social media, and you look up and you're like, it's been 45 minutes.
Yeah, probably.
And you're just like, what even just happened?
Yeah, I think at work one day on my break, I get a half-hour break, and I work at McDonald's, so I got food, and then I sat down and went on TikTok, and next thing I know, my alarm's going off saying my break's over. Yeah. So it's mindless. And so I feel like incorporating mindfulness is a balance. And it might be the only one I know of. It just takes so much willpower to control social media use. And a lot of us just don't have it, especially if we're tired. I know when I'm tired, if I get on, I mean, I'm old, right? So Facebook. If I get on Facebook, I'm like reading people's posts, and then I'm reading the comments to the post, and the next thing I know, it's like an hour later, and I'm just like, I call it my kids, with my children, we call it zombie boo-boo brain. Because that's how it feels, you know? Like, oh, zombie boo-boo brain, I'll go up to their heads. I'm like, if they've been playing video games or something, I'll be like, oh, okay, all right, come on, guys, get on. Stop playing games, you're rotting. Anyway. So, back to your traveling, you go all over the place, so you see many different jobs and inventions. So have you ever thought of an invention?
I wish I could say yes. But I feel like there are so many inventions that already exist. Like, I've thought about things for teachers, but then I end up finding them online, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, clothes specifically for teachers. I actually found a website that's, like, I bought an Edgar Allan Poe dress from this website. It's organic cotton with pockets in it, and it's got Edgar Allan Poe pictures, and this company makes all these, like, teacher clothes. So I had been thinking about that, but I don't really... I'm creative insofar as I write. I'm a writer. But I don't really... create things. I don't build things, and so I don't feel like I really am much of an inventor. And anytime I've ever thought about having a business, I always think about how I can just give stuff away. So I would be a terrible business owner. And so I just gave up on it. I'm like, nah, I'm just going to be a teacher and travel in my, when I'm not teaching. It's kind of or maybe travel writing. That would be awesome.
So, since you write a lot, what's your favorite word? Yeah, that's kind of a out there question.
I was not expecting that question at all. The first thing that came to mind was epitome.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first word that came to my mind, so I'm just going to say that.
Okay.
Even though supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is pretty great too.
Mm-hmm.
And so is onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
Okay, I should stop.
Thank you for joining me on this episode. And for all you listeners, I'll be back next Friday with another episode. So thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.